Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un today signed a new partnership that includes a vow of mutual aid if either country is attacked. And crucially, Kim has vowed full support for Russia's war in Ukraine. This summit comes at a time when both countries face escalating standoffs with the West. The deal, which the leaders say covers areas including security, trade, investment, and cultural and humanitarian ties, could mark the strongest connection between Moscow and Pyongyang since the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Both leaders described it as a major upgrade of their ties. This is Putin's first visit to North Korea in 24 years, and the timing is significant. The US and its allies have repeatedly expressed concerns over an arms arrangement under which the North provides Moscow with desperately needed munitions for its war in Ukraine in exchange for economic assistance and technology transfers that could enhance the threat posed by Kim's nuclear weapons and missile program. Kim said the new deal is the strongest ever treaty between the two nations, putting the relationship at the level of an alliance. Putin said it's a breakthrough document, reflecting a shared desire to move relations to a higher level. Kim has also called Russia the most honest friend and ally and referred to Putin as the dearest friend of the Korean people. The North Korean leader gave Putin a grandiose welcome with red carpets, red roses, the guard of honor at the tarmac. Kim received him at the airport on Tuesday night. The two leaders shook hands, warmly hugged, and then rode together in a limousine in a massive motorcade that rolled through Pyongyang's brightly illuminated streets, where buildings were festooned with giant Russian flags and portraits of Putin. In the morning, Putin attended a welcoming ceremony complete with pomp and pageantry at the city's main square, filled with tens of thousands of spectators, including children holding balloons and people wearing coordinated t-shirts in the red, white and blue colors of the Russian and North Korean flags. Huge crowds lined up on the streets to greet Putin's motorcade, waving flowers in the two countries' flags. This lavish welcome comes as heavily sanctioned North Korea has been suffering from shortages of food, fuel and power, and a depleted economy made much worse by the COVID pandemic. Yet, Pyongyang seems to have spared no cost for this high-profile visit. Putin presented Kim with a Russian luxury Oris car, an admiral's dagger and a tea set. Kim's presents to Putin include artworks depicting the Russian leader. As the talks began, Putin thanked Kim for North Korea's support for his war in Ukraine. He termed it a fight against the imperialist hegemonistic policies of the United States and its satellites against the Russian Federation. Putin hailed ties that he traced back to the Soviet army fighting the Japanese military on the Korean peninsula in the closing moments of World War II and Moscow's support for Pyongyang during the Korean War. Kim said Moscow and Pyongyang's fiery friendship is now even closer than during Soviet times. He said, I have no doubt it will become a driving force, accelerating the creation of a new multipolar world where no dominant country can wield hegemonic power. Kim has promised full support and solidarity to the Russian government, army and people in carrying out the military operation in Ukraine. Even in the past, Kim has described the war on Ukraine as a just action to protect Russia's interests and blamed the crisis on the US-led West's hegemonic policy. Remember, North Korea is under heavy UN Security Council sanctions over its weapons program, and Russia faces sanctions by the United States and its Western allies over its aggression in Ukraine. US and South Korean officials accused the North of providing Russia with artillery, missiles and other military equipment for use in Ukraine in return for key military technologies and economic aid. Both Pyongyang and Moscow deny this. Along with China, Russia has provided political cover for Kim Jong Un's continuing efforts to advance his nuclear arsenal, repeatedly blocking US-led efforts to impose fresh UN sanctions on the North over its weapons tests. Now, this is a visit the West is watching closely and with concern. In Washington, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Putin's visit to North Korea illustrates how Russia tries in desperation to develop and strengthen relations with countries that can provide it with what it needs to continue the war of aggression that it started against Ukraine. According to a recent report by a South Korean spy agency's think tank, the North may also seek to increase labor exports to Russia and other illicit activities to gain foreign currency in defiance of UN Security Council sanctions. Tensions on the Korean Peninsula are at their highest point in years, with the pace of Kim's weapons tests on the one hand and combined military exercises involving the United States, South Korea and Japan on the other intensifying in a tit-for-tat cycle. Let's now take a closer look at what Putin said during his summit with Kim. He has called for the indefinite restrictive regime inspired by the US and its allies at the UN Security Council towards North Korea to be reviewed. He stated that the comprehensive partnership agreement signed by the two countries provides mutual assistance in the event of aggression. The Russian president highlighted recent statements by the US and other NATO countries about the supply of high-precision, long-range weapon systems, F-16 aircraft and other high-tech weapons for inflicting attacks on Russian territory, as he put it. And Putin added that Russia does not rule out developing military technical cooperation with North Korea. However, despite all the claims of an all-powerful alliance, analysts say this relationship has its limits. It's not just the United States that's concerned. China too has been watching with a worried eye. Analysts argue that when Putin and Kim get together, and if North Korea gets hold of better weapons technology, it frightens US allies in the region, and it worries China too, as it is concerned about an East Asian NATO, because it does not want any more US assets such as warships in the region. Therefore, if Russia gives more technology to the North, it will worry Beijing. China wants to be a global leader. It does not want another Cold War. It wants business with both the United States and Europe, and it does not want to isolate itself from the world in the same way that Russia and North Korea have. A former CIA analyst has said Putin's visit to Pyongyang highlights how two pariah states are cementing their ties despite their isolation from the international community. He goes on to say, I think it's pretty pathetic that Putin has to resort to relying on the 198th ranked economy in the world to help his war effort. Many are terming it a marriage of convenience and a transactional relationship. The question is, what does this new agreement between Russia and North Korea mean? What impact could it have on the war in Ukraine? How worried would the United States and its allies be? Is China too wary of this alliance? Is this a strictly transactional relationship? Or, as some have suggested, are we in fact witnessing a stronger emergence of a Russia, China, North Korea, Iran axis to counteract NATO and an attempt to reshape the world order, which these countries see as being unfairly dominated by the United States?